we've been talking as if the notion of a rule for Wittgenstein was unproblematic, but it wasn't. His notion of a rule is itself one of his important contributions to philosophy. What he thought was, first of all, that rules don't block off all eventualities, that language isn't everywhere bounded by rules. Nothing is everywhere bounded by rules. There are always lots of gaps left open by any system of rules. He gives the example of throwing a tennis ball when you serve. There's no rule how high you have to throw it. But I suppose if somebody could throw the thing 5 miles high and we had to wait all day, they'd make a rule. I mean, the rules are never final. Now, another thing he said about rules is that rules are always subject to different interpretations. And if you've ever been through the income tax laws, you know this. I mean, the American history of it is a series of different interpretations. So it looks to Wittgenstein as if there's a kind of skepticism that arises here, because if anything can be made to conform to the rule by some fancy interpretation, then anything can be made to conflict with it, and you wouldn't get either accord nor conflict. The rule would then seem to drop out as irrelevant. Now, his solution to that is to say, obeying the rule is a social practice. It's something we learn in society. Society just has ways of making people and training people to conform to rules. Now, he applies that to this whole private language problem. The problem of the private language is, could there be a language where I just named my own private sensations in a way that no one else could understand it? Now, the reason for all the fuss is that a lot of people in the history of philosophy have thought that must be the basic use of language. In the whole Cartesian
language
tradition,
must name inner experience.
that we get to the real world, the external world, by starting from our inner experiences, by starting from inside and working outward. Now, Wittgenstein wants to say two things about that. First of all, that isn't how the words for our inner experiences actually function. They don't name private objects. Rather, they're used in conjunction with public criteria, behavior, situations. So we're not, in fact, speaking a private language when we use sensation language. But secondly, and more controversially, he says we couldn't, in fact, speak a private language. We couldn't give a private, ostensive definition where we just sort of point inwardly to some private experience and name that experience. Because, he said, unless we can appeal to some larger social gathering, there won't be any difference between my thinking I'm using the word right and I'm actually using it right. So his discussion of the rules and the social character of rules is really what underlies his rejection of the idea of a private language.
And it's important for him to reject the idea of a private language, as you say, because he's reacting against a whole tradition of philosophy that goes back to, I suppose, Descartes, but certainly includes Locke, Berkeley, Hume, the empiricist philosophers, who say that we start by cognition of essentially private states of mind and infer the world or build up a conception of the world from that.
Listen to me. We imagine the meaning of what we say as something queer, mysterious, hidden from view. But nothing is hidden. Everything is open to view. It's just philosophers who muddy the waters.